Hey everybody, it's Steve Kasienko from 8am.com. On the program today is one of the world's renowned tennis coaches. He coaches international tennis players at the cream of the crop level. He's a world traveler. He's an author. He's a speaker. He's a writer. And I've just spoken to him in a pre-interview, and I absolutely love him. I think you will too. Welcome on the program, Pablo Giacopelli.
It's good to be here, Steven. I hope I can live up to that introduction.
Well, dude, I mean, the truth is, you coach the world's greatest female tennis athletes. Is that correct?
Yeah, up there in the top level. My last client was 11 in the world and then 6 in the world in the yearly ranking. Those were her highest rankings. So yes, this obviously the top of the top, as you say.
Yeah, no big deal. I just wanted to make sure. What I want to do is set the benchmark so people understand who's speaking to them in the interview. And you got a new book out called "Holding On Loosely: Finding Life in the Beautiful Tension." Briefly tell me, what is that book about?
That book is about my journey out of religion into a real, live relationship with Christ. And it's a journey where I discovered how to access my heart and how to remain there and how to learn to intimately relate with Him while within the heart.
That's interesting you say that, because in the pre-interview, you made a statement to me where I said, oh, this is going to be interesting. You said most believers miss the life God intended for them to have because they live out of their mind and not out of their heart. So why don't you tell me the difference between living out of your mind and living out of your heart?
Okay, so when you live in your mind is your self-focus. Some people call it the ego. Some people call it pride, but it's basically where you focus on yourself. The mind requires an event in order to function. So you only find events in the future or in the past. You never find yourself worrying about something that is going on in the moment because there's nothing really going on in the present. But you can worry about a future event that hasn't happened that you feel might happen. And you can worry about something that happened to you in the past that might come back and catch up with you, or it might show up in your future. So when you live from your mind, you are attempting to control and manipulate your future. So in other words, you're there already without really being there, trying to create a future that somehow will redeem the past that you're either ashamed of, or you're embarrassed of, or you're hurt from. And then obviously there's the other one where you live in the past, constantly running away from your past, trying to fix your past, trying to control the consequences of your past, and that is obviously resignation. Now, when you live on either of those spaces, you're actually absent from your life where God is.
Okay, now, so let me interpret it let me tell you how I just interpreted that. My interpretation is you're giving another vocabulary for living in the moment or living in the present. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, and you had me with, I understand not living in the past, I get that, but where I'm hung up on is, you see, we can't live in the future. I've got to plan my days out. I've got a whole year planned out. Are you saying not to plan? Even you and I planned this meeting weeks ago because of how busy our schedules are.
Yeah, one thing is to plan something, another thing is to remain up there in the future with the plan. So I made an appointment with you 4 or 5 weeks ago about today, but I didn't keep thinking back at the beginning of September what I was going to do on the October the 5th. I did the plan, I put it in my calendar, and I waited for that day to come.
My ego is completely shattered. I thought that's all you did was think about talking to me. And now it's completely shattered. All right, so it's more about planning but not living in that moment. And you mentioned something interesting. You said that in the present there is nothing to worry about. I'm not sure I believe that. Can you give me an example how there's never anything to worry about in the present?
Well, nothing's happening in the moment. It's just the moment that is before you. There's no events. If you're right here, fully present, what is there to worry about?
Well, okay, let me give you an example. I'll tell you a lot of things I'm worried about. Number one, I'm worried about the cameras coming off. I'm worried about whether the lights are going to be working, whether I have too much lighting. Is it too hot on my face? Is my assistant going to walk through the door not realizing the red light outside is saying we're filming? I mean,
that's because you are living your life concerned about the outcome and the results of your life.
Is that a bad thing, though? I mean, you're a tennis coach. How can you not? How can you not say you're going to tell your the person you're coaching? Don't worry about the results.
Well, the results are God's responsibility in our lives. I think what He is more interested in is our being with Him, living in the moment. When we try and become, it's not about becoming; it's about being. And God doesn't really talk. He actually says, Jesus says, "Do not worry about tomorrow, what you will eat or what you will wear." Results, but focus on what God is doing right now. Because what I'm trying to do is get you to relax from all your getting, which is the lights, the secretary, the results. Yeah, so that you can be open and be aware of the giving that God is doing to you.
Okay. So there's two things I want to cover. I want to talk about what prevents people from living in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also want to talk about how can we consistently cultivate a life of living from the heart. So let's start with what prevents us from living from the heart.
Well, when we are wounded in our hearts, that is a big major thing, because wounds demand our attention, and when we are unaware where the wounding is or what caused it, but we are only basically subject to the consequences of it, we try and somehow repair and ease that pain that we know is present in our lives. Yeah, the familiar is something else. If you come from a family that is very much focused on performance, behavior, getting it right, getting results, then you're always going to be in the future trying to fulfill that familiarity that was passed on to you. Obviously, when you are more concerned about what people think about you as opposed to what God thinks about you, the way you impress people is by getting things right. And so then again, you are going to be afraid of the past when you got it wrong, and you're going to be concerned about not doing that again. Now, there's nothing wrong with learning from experience, but what we want to learn from experience shouldn't really affect our identity of who we are, just what we do when we are doing it.
So I guess that it prevents us from just fully expressing ourselves in the moment out of fear of what man may say, what we may look like.
Right. So basically, that's very good. You see, basically, you are very much empowered by shame, because, and shame and guilt and condemnation, you're fearful. And so then fear and the fear of failure become foes, when in reality, fear and failure are actually our allies when we look at them with the eyes of love and we know who we are in Christ and who Christ is in us.
That's interesting you said that, because right before I spoke with you, I was going through your blogs, and you've got this famous video of Michael Jordan saying failing forward. And he talks about all the times he failed, and yet he's the greatest basketball player ever.
Well, the word fail, it's finding answers in life.
Oh, that's great!
Okay, so basically, failure is the richest learning ground known to man. If you think about, in the Bible, we have hindsight. We can see people's lives from beginning to end, which we obviously can't see in our lives. And if you look at, say, Moses, he spent 40 years in a desert in what he was obviously thinking, I failed. Then you got Joseph that spent 7 years in a jail for something he didn't do, and he would have thought, this is it for my life, I failed. And then you got David spending years in the cave hiding from Saul, and he would have thought, this is it. But we see then that is actually a space. So failure is not an outcome, a result, or an identity. It's a space that we travel through.
Okay. And so, that's interesting. Then you're actually saying that we determine what failure is, and we determine if it's a negative or a positive.
Well, failure, when your identity is fixed on failure, is centered on failure, failure is an enemy, because it only reminds you what you already feel about yourself. You understand? But if your identity is centered on Christ, you understand that you're going through a space in which you're learning lessons. Now, any high-performance athlete, like Michael Jordan, like the players I work with, you cannot work from your ego, because your ego will not allow you to stay in failure, because failure and ego don't go together. But when you live from your heart, where you know who you are and who you are in Him and He is in you, then you no longer need the love and affirmation from others that you kind of don't get when you are in that space. And you're kind of happy to stay there as long as you need to stay there. And God isn't for our failure. He wants us to be successful. But it's during those spaces that we learn and we become able so that when we leave that space, we're able to go into the spaces of victory without them taking us over and robbing us of our identity.
Okay, got it. Okay, so this is actually really, really cool. You should come on and do a whole training for our audience about this.
I just been doing it in America, and it was very, very well received. And people were really, were really amazed at the simplicity of it, the truthness of it, and how much they live their lives in this control and manipulation and resignation, and how absent they are from their lives. And then they begin to realize that it isn't God that is not absent. It isn't Him who's all of a sudden gone mute, or deaf, but that it's actually us who are absent from the place where He is, which is in our hearts in the moment.
Oh, that's great. So, can you give me, can you give the audience one, if you can, three ways of reminding ourselves to live from the heart in the present?
Well, one of the first things that very few of us do, a lot of us say we're going to have quiet time in the morning, and then we do anything but be quiet. Yeah?
But just for the record, I'm laughing because I don't do that anymore. Because every time I have a quiet time, my blood pressure goes through the roof. I get all upset. I get all aggravated because I can't be quiet. So that's why I'm laughing that you said that. It just happened to me this morning.
Right. Okay. So basically, one of the things that I do not every morning, but most mornings and most days, I take 15 minutes out where I sit there. And I literally just sit there, I say nothing, I basically get myself centered in the moment, and I just have a fellowship with God that it goes beyond words. And when I am in that place, I'm fully present with God. Because when God introduced Himself to Moses, He didn't say, I'm the great I was, or the great I will. He said, I'm the great I am. In eternity, there's no time, there's no beginning and end. So when we function from our hearts, we are timeless because we are eternal there. Yeah, there in that part of our hearts is where our spirit lives. We are eternal. We are not bound by time. So you automatically become present when you function from your heart. Okay, that's one thing that obviously I do, and most people don't do that. Most people, they hit and run God with prayers. God, I need this. Blah, 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 blah. Thank you very much. In Jesus' name, they go on with their day to try and manipulate and make it happen. You see, so no trust in that kind of life. And then we wonder why we don't experience the life the Bible tells that we could experience when we meet Christ. Now, that is, that alone right there, and I mean, 15 minutes for some people is a long time, so try 5 minutes where you just sit there and do absolutely nothing. The other thing that I often do to learn to be present is, I understand when my mind is going somewhere, is trying to go somewhere to manipulate. I invite Christ and I say, okay, Lord, I know why I'm going there. You know the reasons why you're going there, what you're trying to accomplish and achieve, and what you're trying to manipulate or fix. And I allow God to come into that place, and I say, Jesus, come into that place in my heart that is trying to take me there. And just do whatever you need to do. So it might be something I'm scared of, so I'm trying to run ahead to try and prevent it, or to try and avoid it, or even a failure that I'm afraid might happen. Yeah, and I ask God to do that and to heal me. That is the second one that I do a lot of, because I feel that we go through situations in life that reveal things to us about who we are, and if we're present, we're aware. And when you're aware, you see a lot more. You capture a lot more. And the other thing that I have come to understand about life is that life is not something to be fixed, changed, or improved, but it's a discovery. And when you approach life as a discovery, you then, because you're aware, things are added to you. And remember, Jesus said, do not worry what you will eat and what you will wear. God will add these things to you. Now, when something is added to you, it becomes part of who you are. You don't have to maintain it. You don't have to activate it all the time consciously. You don't have to use energy and resources to keep it going. So, in other words, when those of us that live out of behavior and the performance of it, we have to really try hard. And at the end of the day, we become very exhausted because we're wearing a mask and pretend to be someone we are not. When you discover life, you can't discover something you don't experience. So if I go in an exploration trip with you, I can't say to people, well, I've discovered these caves. You haven't got there yet. You haven't seen any caves. So you have to wait to get to that place and experience it. Take it in. Let it be part of what you're doing and what's happening in front of you. So you live in moment by moment. Like you sit down to talk. I'm talking with you now. I could be thinking what I'm going to do. I have another conversation in an hour and a half from here. I could be thinking what I'm going to do there. But what I'm doing now is I'm not in that moment, because the future is a moment that hasn't happened, and the past is a moment that already happened. Yeah? And so my moment right now is with you. So I want to fully give you everything. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. Okay, so I want to go into something. Backtrack a little bit. The first one is this. Let's say someone is fearing something that's coming in the future. There's someone who's very close to me who often will fear about, are we going to have enough money? Am I going to have? Do I have to continue working as hard as we're going to work? How do you get them? And every time I've spoken with this person, and I've tried to get this person to not worry about, not to focus on it, it's almost like this person's programmed to go back and focus on it. And it creates emotions of fear and distress and anxiety. How would you coach that person to get healing in that area?
Fear is an alarm. Fear is an alarm. It's an alarm that goes off every time something wounded or weak within us, it's impact. Okay? And the best thing you can do with fear is walk right into it, right into the middle of it, and remain there. Okay? Now.
So what do you mean by that? Do you mean like, so if this person is thinking about something that they're fearful about, to actually go in there to what they're thinking about and examine what it looks like?
What happens when you are fearful, you panic. You start to try and you go in overdrive. How can I quench this fear away? How can I satisfy it so it leaves me? Instead of, okay, I'm not going to do anything, and I'm going to sit here and I'm going to feel the fear. I'm going to go right into the middle of it, and I want to ask God to show me what is the root of this fear, because fear is not the disease. Fear is the symptom. Yeah? Disease is something else. The problem is something else. The fear is just an alarm that is actually there going to you. Listen, there is something down here that needs fixing, that needs changing, that needs improving, that needs healing. Yeah? You can neither fix, change, or heal your heart. God has to do that. And the only person that can show you and reveal to you, often wounding, when you're wounded, you're fearful. And so when the situation comes around that reminds you of whatever it is that it originally wounded you, you become scared. Because your heart has a memory. Yeah, your heart thinks, This is another complete subject that we can talk about time. Your heart stores up memory. And so your heart then remembers that when that wound happened, and it starts to send you a signal. Careful, I'm very weak here. This happened before. Remember what happened when this happened. So instead of trying to manipulate and control the fear, we need to go back to the place, the root problem. Yeah, I had a situation in my life where I held on to it like this, holding on tight instead of holding on loosely. And as long as I did that for many years, I continually became afraid every time a situation arose in my life that resembled something to do with that wounding. Now, God showed me, He said, look, Pablo, you can either keep that away from me, and you can keep trying to manage it, and you can keep trying to administrate it, which is going to consume your life and emotionally exhaust you, and limit the life that I have for you. And obviously, limit the fact that you only live from part of your heart, because that part is sealed away. Or you can loosen the grip and invite me in. You see, when we hold on tight, we make no room for God. And He can't give us anything and do anything really with us or for us. But when we loosen the grip, we create space in our life. And He comes into that part. And it comes really down to, do we really trust that God is going to heal us? For some of us, fear is very real. Are we able to trust Him that He's not going to make those things happen, hurt us with it, but that He's going to really come in and set us free?
I love it. And getting back to the last thing I wanted to backtrack on to was sitting down quietly for 15 minutes. Can you go into detail? What does that exactly mean? Are you focusing on something? What happens with your thoughts? You let your thoughts just go wherever they want to go?
tell you what I do. When you're in the moment, your mind is completely still, becomes quiet. It's got nothing to think about. There's nothing happening. That's why I keep, I said at the beginning, you need an event for your mind to function. If there's nothing to think about, your mind is completely still. Okay. So what I do is I sit there and I just center myself. I put my hand in here, just below my chest where my heart is. Yeah. Not the heart that goes boom, 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 but the gut. Yeah. It's where we are, our essence is. And when I become completely still and quiet, now this takes practice. You don't just sit there and it happens, because some of us are so busy up here that we just need to exercise just sitting there. Our mind quiets itself, yeah, because it's like a pendulum that is going on inside of us. Future, past, future, past. And eventually, if you stop trying to hold the pendulum, it will rest in a place where it's just, yeah, and God said to David, be still and know that I am God. Now that word in Hebrew, be still, actually means loosen your grip and intimately get to know me as God. Okay, it comes from the word pa, which is rafa, which in Hebrew means loosen your grip. And so basically, once you find yourself in that, I say first thing I say is, you are here, meaning God. I am here. We are here together. Okay? Then goes by. I mean, I sense the presence now. I mean, I'm fully centered now talking to you, yeah? And I don't feel it. I know it's here, yeah? But I don't know it's here around me. It's within me. I can sense the life God out of me, yeah? And then the next three things is, who are you? Who am I? Who are we together? And this is home. This is home for me. Yeah, I am here, he's here, we're here together. Who is he? I want to know who he is. We think we know. Well, how can you know the God of the universe? You know some things about him. You know him in some ways. But always may God deliver us from knowing. Yeah? And may God deliver us from thinking we know ourselves completely. Because it's just so I invite God because he's already there, but I welcome him. I know that he's welcome to show me what he wants to show me. And who we are together is the last one. Because I want to know who we are together. I want to come into that full reality of being centered in Christ. Like Jesus said, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Now that right there, we can talk about for 3 or 4 hours.
Oh man, Pablo, I am just so grateful you came on the program. What I love about this interview is that you shared real practical insights. It wasn't theoretical, 30,000 feet off the ground. It was on the floor, boots on the ground. I love when that happens. It's really rare. Thank you for coming on the program. Guys, get his book, Holding On Loosely, Finding Life in a Beautiful Tension. You can click on the links below. He also has this workbook that you can download absolutely free. And check out his website, uexcelinlife.com. Click on that link. You'll love some of the stuff that you see there. It has been a privilege and a great honor having you on the program.
Thank you very much. The last nice little statue behind Jesus washing Peter's.
Yeah, hey, that's my motto. Hey, blessings to you.
And I would just encourage people to let Jesus wash their feet.